Yep, that would be a URL. And I've put it at the very beginning of this nugget simply because this series is unlike anything else I've ever done at CBT Nuggets. It is what I would call the first user-guided series that's out there. And I'm putting this at the beginning of this nugget because eventually that URL will no longer be there. The series will be done. It'll be locked in stone, and it will take a year or more before we actually make any changes to it. What that URL is your ability to provide feedback for this series. Meaning, actually, let me paste it in right here. I'm going to paste it in. It is a simple, that's the key, 2-question piece that says, what topic or video would you like to see covered? What feedback can you offer Jeremy as he completes this series? So as we're going through this, I know many of you, CBT Nuggets is making this available as I'm producing these videos. Also a first time that they've done that, which is incredible because it gives you and me the option to kind of collaborate together on what would be great to see in the series. Now, just to give you an idea, when we first put this out there, I think they sent a newsletter and said, hey, FYI, we're doing this series. The feedback was tremendous. Hundreds of people replied and said, oh, we'd love to see this, and here's my topic. And now I'm looking at this, and I'm not putting anybody down, but it's kind of, you look, it's like, it's slowing down, and I want to kind of revitalize it because as I'm going, I want to get your feedback. I want to hear, are we going in the right direction? Are we going in a direction that you wouldn't want us to go? What topics would you want? For example, I mean, it's just, just to show you how much you guys are affecting the series. This comment came in and said, I know VPN is not in the CCNA curriculum, but it would be nice to have in the series. And I got that comment, I said, absolutely. And so check this out. This is the objective slide for this next nugget that you're now listening to right now, which you can see I've now added. I mean, it's literally like you're saying, I want that. Now, okay, I know some people were like, I would like BGP within MPLS, and I'd love to see how that. There's some things where I just go, wow. Okay, that's a little too far beyond. But if I can see it in the real world, if it's something that we encounter like VPN connectivity, wow, I haven't seen a network in the last. I almost want to throw decade out there, but a last long time that doesn't incorporate VPN connectivity. Cisco has started to add it to the CCNA exam, but I think that it's not going to be anywhere near in depth. It's just because of the sheer complexity. But anyway, my point on that is not to talk about VPNs directly. My point is, please come to that URL. I'm bringing it back up. There it is. Go to that URL right now, provide feedback on where you think we should go next, what your thoughts are on this series. You know what I feel like? I feel like I'm selling diamond rings on, what's that TV network? Where it's like, go to this, it's kind of blinking. Within the next 30 seconds, go here and you'll get a diamond ring for $5. So anyway, I can't promise you a diamond ring, but I will promise you that it will make this series awesome. The more feedback that you can provide, because I'm taking your hand and you're walking me through the different topics that you have always wanted to know, always wanted to have an understanding of. So let's get started. We're now moving into routing and internet connectivity options. And again, as you guys have guided me, these are the topics that I've pulled together from the feedback people have provided that really correspond to not only the CCNA exam. Absolutely, by the way, every single one of these topics are testable on the CCNA exam. Types of internet connections that are out there. Help me understand public and private IP addressing. Help me understand NAT, how that plays into it. What about incoming connections? What's the best way to design a DMZ to provide incoming connections to servers you may have within your company? And I want to talk a little bit about, when we get there, about the cloud. What is the cloud? How does that relate to you? How is it changing the design of networks everywhere? And then finally, I want to bring in VPN connectivity. It's not an internet connectivity option, but once you are connected to the internet, it is definitely an option of how you are able to connect to remote users, how you are able to bridge your offices together. It's a very, very powerful technology. Okay, well, let's start off with internet connectivity options. Now, this was, if you remember way back to the beginning of this series, The company that we were working with in this scenario said they wanted us to advise them what type of internet connection they should use for the branch office. So this, think of this as answering that objective the company had, because while I can't say, well, this is what they should go with, because there's more information that I would need. I'd need to know what would be available in that area. You know, obviously these connectivity options are great as long as they're available. So what I'm going to do is give you the information that you would need to make that choice. First of all, DSL and cable. Now, if it were maybe 5 years ago, I don't know if I would even bring this up for a branch office or any kind of office scenario other than maybe a SOHO, a small office, home office. But DSL and cable has been evolving over the years. Now, you probably know DSL and cable are typically used within home connections. The telephone carriers, the cable TV carriers all realized that eventually telephone and cable TV weren't going to exist anymore. And I don't know if you knew that news, but they're not. You know, there's still going to be quote unquote cable TV, but it's going to come over an internet connection. There's still going to be telephone service, but it's going to come over, again, the internet connection. Everything is now moving into the one connection to rule them all. It's like Lord of the Connections. So DSL and cable have been attacking the home market for a long time, but within the last 5 years have really begun to make a stand in the business market. Now, I want to make sure that you catch, first of all, today, you know, that we are at the end of 2011 right now, but today, in this world that we live in, DSL and cable, as they stand, are not as reliable as a typical lease line internet connection. However, they have become reliable enough for most businesses. Meaning, when you go out and you buy, first off, nowadays these providers are, let me just draw a little bracket here. They still have kind of home versions of DSL and cable, and they have business versions. I'll just put BUS. Business versions of DSL and cable. Now, they are essentially the same exact thing. So I want you, well, let me tell you the difference. Home version, you know, with a 5-year deal or whatever, it'll be $49 a month for a home connection that maybe runs at, I don't know, I'll just throw a speed out there, 10 megabits per second internet connectivity. Business version may be $189 a month. It's exactly the same thing, but they will put your business account name on the invoice. It's connecting to the same network that the guy down the street is for $49, but they start including features on there that they don't offer their home users. And I'll tell you the biggest feature, I know many of you already know what I'm going to say, static IP address. Meaning, when you're in a home connection, most of the DSL and cable providers will not offer you a static IP address. Because in order to have incoming connections, and let me bite my tongue when I say that. In order to have reliable incoming connections, meaning you can have incoming connections with any kind of IP address, but the static IP address, the one that doesn't change, is what you need to have reliable connections. They see that as a business class feature, and rightly so. You know, they're trying to make their money. They're trying to run a business themselves. Most home users don't need a static IP address. So there's, you know, that's one of the big price differences. But let me wrap that all back around and say, when you go with a business class DSL or cable connection, don't feel like, wow, this is going to be way better than my home connection. This is going to be, you know, da-da-da. What the only difference is, they'll probably give you a static IP address or give you the option for them. You'll probably be the next tier up in tech support, meaning when you call in, they'll put you ahead of all the home users that are calling in as well, because they realize you're paying more for your connection. You're getting a higher grade of service in their mind, but you're still sharing the same kind of cables that are out there. So DSL and cable, let me tell you the benefits. Benefits are you get a pretty decent amount of bandwidth. I mean, a lot of them nowadays, like for instance, my house, they just upgraded my line to, let me say, they upgraded my line's capability. I haven't done it, to go to 50 megabits per second down speed and 10 megabits per second up speed on transmit and receive, which is a lot of bandwidth. Even, you know, for a business, that would be a lot of bandwidth to have for a very, very low cost. So they give a lot lot of bandwidth for a low amount of money, but it's not going to have the reliability, at least today. I'm not saying it will never, but at least today, it's not going to have the reliability of a lot of the other connections that are out there. Now, so let me boil that back down into the branch office, the small business. I would say if you're working with somebody where budget is an issue, where they're thinking about money, and that's a major issue, and always being online is not an issue. And don't let me make you feel like, wow, this is going offline every day. I mean, I've have customers that have run 5-6 months without dropping a single packet from the cable or DSL provider. But again, 5-6 months of running, and then all of a sudden you have an hour outage or 2-hour outage. Some businesses would say, "Phew, we can't handle that. We would lose more in that 1 to 2 hours of outage than it would be to pay for a higher grade internet connection in the long run anyway, like one of the leased lines." But I'm actually not going to go in order here. I'm going to go over here to fiber optic and metro, because these have become very closely related. Providers everywhere, and I'm out in Arizona, so let me use Arizona as an example. We have Qwest, now bought out and renamed CenturyLink, and Cox are the major providers. Qwest, or I gotta stop saying that, because CenturyLink is the DSL provider. Cox is the cable provider. And to provide those services, they've been digging up streets all over our state and running massive bundles of fiber optic cabling to deliver. That's really the backbone of a lot of the providers nowadays, is fiber optic cable. Well, they said, well, you know what? We can allow people to not use DSL, not use cable, but they can actually jump onto our fiber optic cables, pay a much higher grade of service. For example, I'll just give you some rates that I recently was quoted for one of my clients. It was $650 a month. For connectivity to the fiber optic network, and I was using Qwest, or it's just funny how the politics work. Qwest has what they call their QMO cloud, which is like Qwest Metropolitan Optical Cable or something. And I was meeting with a couple guys, really good guys from Qwest after it's renamed CenturyLink, and I said, so we got to get this business on the QMO cloud, right? And they go, whoa, it's the Mo. And I said, the what? He said, the Mo. We're no longer Qwest, we're CenturyLink, so it's the Mo now. We don't call it QMO, it's just Mo. And I said, it makes me think of the guy off of The Simpsons, Mo. Hi, Homer. I'm like, you can't name the fiber optic cloud Mo. But anyway, whatever they decide to name it, they have, again, across the nation, run fiber optic cable under the streets and in all the different areas. And what they'll say is they'll just take a little converter, bring that fiber in, install a switch in your building, and say, there you go. Connect your router there, and you are on the fiber optic cloud. Now, the cool thing about this, and this is actually why I was meeting with these guys recently, we have a client that in Arizona, there's a city of Scottsdale and the city of Mesa. They're about 30 miles apart. Well, Qwest, or CenturyLink, services both of those areas, and we had them quote out a connection to the Mo, to where we've got now the fiber optic cable coming in to Mesa. We have the fiber optic cable coming into Scottsdale. It's now considered private fiber between those two offices, and these are little, what I would call virtual circuits. It bridges off to the internet. And you might be saying, well, there's two clouds there. Where's the real cloud? That's the real internet is up here, but this is the Mo, the QMO cloud. That is all private fiber optic cabling. So again, same carriers that do DSL and cable, but now they're running fiber optic connections to the customer premise, to where you can just literally wham, jack in the fiber, and it's as if I ran a big old Ethernet cable from Mesa all the way out to Scottsdale, and I have now this private connection going between them, and they both share an internet connection. Now, why is that cool? Well, first off, the internet connection doesn't really exist here or here. So if Mesa, for whatever reason, our router went offline, it doesn't affect Scottsdale or anything like that. And the internet connection is independent. So instead of paying more for an internet connection at each one of these locations, I just purchase a connection to the Mo, and I can increase the speed of this internet connection as the sites need it, and it's shared bandwidth. When I say shared, I mean between the sites. So, maybe before I could only afford a 10 megabit per second at each site. Well, once I eliminate the internet connection at each site, I can now afford maybe a 50 meg connection that's shared between the two sites, because once you've got the connection there, it doesn't cost the carrier that much more to just increase the speed of the connection. So, all of that kind of groups together into that DSL cable fiber optic bunch. Okay, let's drop down to the satellite connections. Satellite connections are how you get internet connectivity if you're in a location where there's nothing else that can reach you. Pretty much about the only reason I've found to use satellite. And the reason for that is satellite is affected by all kinds of things. The rain, the sun, clouds, small birds, objects flying in the air, a rock, it's just about anything. It's a dish that they mount on the top of your premises that shoots up to the outer space, satellites that are floating around out there, and they can provide internet connectivity through that. Normally the speeds are not to be desired. They're usually much lower speed connections than what we're used to nowadays, but I would say it's a good alternative if you've got nothing. And I just yesterday, I run a company now called Easy IT, which provides essentially outsourced IT services for small and medium businesses. And so we get a lot of this kind of stuff, small businesses out on the fringe, to where I was out at a farm yesterday, and the only connectivity that they had at this farm was satellite, and he was saying, I can't even watch YouTube. As he, of course, everybody's primary business goal is to watch YouTube, and it would just keep cutting out all the way through, especially on a rainy day and that kind of thing. But does provide some type of connectivity for almost every location in the world, because once you go satellite, the sky is your limit. Wow, I just thought of that. So next one, lease lines. Lease lines, very close to the fiber optic world I just talked about, is where the carrier provides you a dedicated circuit to you. Lease lines, I mean, when somebody says, hey, I have a T1 line, most people don't realize that T1 lines are really a measure of speed. That when you say T1, all that means is 1.544 megabits per second. That's how fast a T1 line goes. You could have a T1 cable connection or a T1 DSL, but when most people say I have a T1 line, what they mean is I have a T1 worth of speed on a lease line network using some kind of technology like CAS or CCS, and we won't even get into all the underlying technologies of lease lines. But I would say number one benefit you gain from lease lines is how do I say it? Reliability. I would say it is a solid connection. It may be slow. And that's by the way the drawback a lot of times of lease line. It may be slower than most people are used to, but it's always seems to stay online. Again, based on your carrier and things like that. The reason I say it might be slow is because the cost of these are typically much higher. For example, a T1 line, now the costs have dropped a lot in recent years, but you might be paying $300 a month for a T1 line. And now that might be 1.5 megabits per second. So compare that to our cable and DSL where you can get 50, we'll say, megabits per second for 189, for almost half the price of this, but it's 50 megabits per second, not so well guaranteed, whereas this, you've got SLAs like 99.999% uptime. We guarantee it, those kind of things. So where reliability is an issue, lease lines are the way to go. And I'm not saying you're captive to these kind of speeds. You can go as high as you want with lease lines. You can get a lot of bandwidth coming in, but remember, this exponentially goes up. When you start bundling T1 lines, I mean, your internet connection can easily take steps into the thousands or tens of thousands of dollars a month. Simply because of the level of service that you're getting with lease lines. So lease lines, very expensive, but very reliable. So fiber optic metro, we've already talked about that. Line of sight wireless. There are some carriers in some areas, and I will say I haven't seen too many of these, but that offer a line of sight wireless connection, meaning it's not satellite. But they mount a dish on the roof of your business or somewhere around your premises and beam the internet connection to you from a close area. And you can get some decent speeds, 11 megabits per second, 20 megabits per second, depending on the grade of wireless and how close you are to them. But that might be an option. Sometimes cities have started rolling out wireless citywide, and you might be able to contract with your local county or city to get those. ISDN, I would say that this one holds the candle, and it's very, 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 very closely related to the lease lines. For the age of connection, well, except for the one below it, ISDN has been around for decades. It is typically used for telephone service, but can also be used for data service. So I would say that the bonus of ISDN is maybe in its flexibility. A lot of times you might hear the term flex lines, where you can have a line that's used for telephone channels or data channels. And again, with voice over IP taking over the world, even that, I'm like, well, there's all kinds of ways to do that, but it's just that's where ISDN comes in. And the bottom of the rung, we have dial-up. And I'm not, some of you are like, all right, skip. But I'm telling you, there are some areas of the world where that's still all they have. My wife and I went on a trip to Honduras to help some struggling areas, and literally we were in a dirt town where donkeys were walking through the street, and I mean a lot of times people didn't have roofs over their head, housing, and that kind of area we were in. And sure enough, I go, wow, we're really in the middle of nowhere. And as we come into the town, there is the internet cafe, the little blinking fluorescent sign, and I thought, good grief, the internet is everywhere. And I went in there, of course, because I'm just curious, to find out what the internet cafe was. And it was literally a 56K modem, which I'm sure didn't even connect at 56K, that was shared between the 10 computers that were kind of homegrown, self-built computers in that facility. And it worked. I mean, it was brutally slow because I was in there. There was another gentleman in there down the way from me. So it was two of us essentially sharing a dial-up connection. But I would say they're still out there, and dial-up connectivity can be found just about anywhere. So let me bring this all back around to our scenario. We were working with the branch office, and they said, advise what kind of internet connection we would want to use for the branch office. I would say, well, I would kind of roll out the options, and the only options I would give that location, our branch office that we've been working with throughout this series, is I would say, okay, DSL, cable, those are options, a lease line option, and then a fiber optic option. I would say, okay, let's check availability, because, man, if we're close to the corporate office, we may be able to score a fiber optic deal to where we bring both the corporate office and the branch office onto the Mo cloud, if you will, or whatever cloud is offered in the area. When I say cloud, I'm just saying a fiber optic mesh where things are all connected together within the metropolitan area. That's why I have metro on there. Metropolitan area with fiber optic cabling, and we may be able to get some great connectivity for both offices, and maybe even save some more money on what the corporate office is paying. So I would say those are the options. I would roll out the differences between those. Chances are, just based on what I've seen of the scenarios so far that we've been creating, management would probably either spring for this or spring for this, just because in the scenario, I know a lot of times they brought up budget. For instance, they purchased small business office grade wireless access points instead of a controller solution. So that tells me they're thinking in terms of money. It's more of a consideration. So we'd probably end up on one of these kinds of connections. That's a great place to divide up into the first piece of internet connectivity, talking about the types of internet connections that are available and what we should choose. From there, in the next nugget, I'm going to go through and really break this down in some nice detail so that you can understand the public, the private IP addressing. We'll throw NAT into that mix. How to handle incoming connections and DMZ design. Those are just good logical topics to group all together. So for now, I hope this has been informative for you, and I'd like to thank you for viewing.